system. What has happened during this lockdown, this whole coronavirus? Vast numbers of people have acquiesced to the tiny few that is dictating this, and dictating this fine detail of what you can do and what you can't do. And you know what it's all about? You know, you've got these situations where they've come out with rules that, well, you can see your one parent in a park, but you can't see them in the garden because you might have to go through the house. Yeah, okay. You can see one parent in the park, and then you can see another parent, but you can't see them together. And one grandparent, not together. And you look at all these rules and fine detail. You've got to wear a mask where the pores are much bigger than viral particles, so they're a waste of bloody time anyway, and you'll be breathing in your own carbon dioxide and not oxygen, so that's going to have respiratory consequences if it goes on for long enough. And you know what they're going to do when those respiratory consequences happen? They're going to call it COVID-19. All these things, what are they doing? It's a psychological game. They know that the more ridiculous things they can tell you to do, which you then do and acquiesce to, the more acquiescent you are becoming, step by step by step, to the point where you no longer have a capacity for free thought. You just do whatever you're told, like some automaton. And this is what is happening. You've got to wear masks on public transport, on trains, on ferries, on buses. Okay. So from tomorrow,
taxis
in Britain, taxis, they will, right? What if a carriage full of people on a train? So we ain't doing it. We ain't doing it. What are you going to do? Call the guard. Call the guard. Guard comes down. Got to have masks on. We're not going to put them on. What's he going to do? What's anybody going to do if enough people say we're not doing it? The power of this cult through the generations to present time, the power of this 1% is merely the power humanity acquiesces to them constantly. And I was on the ferry coming over today, and this lady came round. There's hardly anybody on the ferry who was a passenger. And she starts telling everybody that tomorrow this is what has to happen. You've got to have a mask, you've got to do this, got to do that. And I started questioning her about masks and got a clue. I didn't know anything about them. But what's happened? This is how it works. You've got the cult in the shadows, and they operate through the permanent governments, the financial system, the medical system, the governmental system, the media system, etc. And as it comes down the hierarchy, you reach the level of administering into reality what the cult has dictated. And apart from the very, very high ups of this administrative level of this hierarchical pyramid, they won't even know there is a cult. But each level both takes and acquiesces to the diktats above them and imposes that upon those below them, who then acquiesce and pass it on and impose it on the next level. And so it all the way comes down. That's the administrative level, symbolized by this lady who works for the ferry company today. And then it comes down to the massive population, billions of people. And what the vast majority of them do is then take this hierarchical system of top-down acquiescence and imposition, and they acquiesce to what they're told. If they didn't do that, if they ask questions like, who benefits? Well, actually, you benefit. I don't benefit from doing this. You benefit. So what's the game? Why do you want me to do this? What's in it for you? Instead of doing that, you just acquiesce. You just do it. And I've been talking the last few days, you know, you know, if the World Health Organization came out and said, well, doctors say that wearing Mickey Mouse ears can be a protection against the virus. Some people will wear Mickey Mouse ears. And you get Facebook putting Mickey Mouse ears adverts in front of you. But if we didn't acquiesce to it, if we said we're not going to allow our kids to be put in chalk circles or locked off small areas, alone, disconnected from all the other kids, we're not doing it. Our kids ain't going to school until that crap is finished. What would they have to do? They'd have to stop it. But people don't. Fortunately, a vast number of people have looked at the world in its extreme expression in the last few months, and they've actually seen, the world is not like I thought it was, and there has been an awakening. But that's only step one. You can stand on the other side of the street, and you can start to understand the game, and you can start to see the game on the other side of the street, and you can start to work out what's happening and why they're doing this and why they're doing that. But that's step one. Step two is crossing the road and engaging with the system. But it's not even protest. What is protest? You know, so many protests, they protest and they protest, and then they go home, and what changes? Nothing. And nothing will change until we stop acquiescing to the system and stop cooperating with our own enslavement. When that happens, it's game over. And I'll give you an example. It's so potent. How many of those people out protesting and trying to knock down statues, which is all part of removing history, which is a cult agenda, been in my books for years, but that's the idea. It's like Orwell said, who controls the past controls the future, who controls the present controls the past. And what they're doing is getting rid of history of the past. They're getting rid of the old normal in every way, so we then, through the generations, forget the old normal even exists, so the new normal can become.
Do they have legitimate arguments that I don't want to see a monument that reminds me of, you know, racism in my country from 100 years ago?
Well, why not put a plaque on it explaining the good things the person did, if they did any, and also warts and all? So we have an historical reference that includes the entirety of what that person did. Yes, he gave money to hospitals. Yes, he gave money to build schools, but he also had slaves and made his money from slavery. So we have history. Where we've come from gives us a fix on where we are. When you remove all knowledge of history, you lose focus and understanding of where you are. For instance, Marxist regimes have cost the lives of 100 million people. Now, if we have that in our history and we know it, we know that ain't a place to go. Because what happens is you have the revolution, and at the end of the revolution eats itself because another tyranny replaces the one you're revolting against. So you'd say, well, no, we can't go down that road. Look what's happened, 100 million people. China, Cambodia, etc. Soviet Union. But if you can remove that and dilute it, that's what's been happening in the schools and universities, the diluting of history and the teaching of history, then you can persuade people that haven't got that knowledge that maybe Marxism is a good way to go. And you've got so much of the woke mentality calling for a Marxism. Hold on a minute, 100 million dead people. It's a frickin' tyranny, just like fascism. But if you have your history, you know that in the present. If you don't, it's all new to you. Oh yeah, Marxism, that sounds like a good idea. And so if you look at Orwell's 1984, He wrote a lot about the need to destroy history, because that allows you to control the perception of the present by controlling the perception of the past. It's very important. This great line about if we don't learn the lessons of history, we are destined to repeat them. Well, they don't want us to learn the lessons of history, because so many things that have happened in history, they want to happen now, but in the modern sense.
So if we remove those statues, we might actually repeat what's going to happen in the past, possibly.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I mean, if people want to decide to put those statues in a museum or something and put other statues up, but and again, who the hell hasn't got a warts and all? You know what I mean? I don't quote the Bible very much, but let he who hath no sin cast the first stone is a good one. And like I said earlier, if we're not streetwise and informed, you can get groups of people motivated and driven by an organization funded by the same network behind slavery to demand that statues are brought down, or indeed pull them down with chains, because of their connection to slavery. Yeah? Crazy, man. But this is what happens when you don't get informed and you just react instead of look at the wider picture. And